How do vegan parents deal with the challenges of not just being vegan in a non-vegan world, but sharing those values with their children?
Last month, 3 adults shared their stories of growing up vegan. Now it's the parents' turn.
We're at VegfestUK in the port city of Bristol in the west of England with our first ever studio audience.
People have popped away from the food and bands to talk about vegan parenting.
And from the sun.
I'm not sure anyone will believe us, but it is a sunny day in England.
With Ian MacDonald and Diana Fleischman.
With stories and analysis.
This is...
The Vegan Option!
We're happy to be joined by, what's your name?
Lauren.
Laura?
Lauren.
Lauren, and what do you painted as, Lauren?
Adia.
You look very nice. What's your name?
Sarah.
Sarah is Laura's mom. Okay, so we're just going to get started. So if you're a regular listener, you saw Ian's pleas for votes on the internet, you might remember that this festival nominated us for their media award.
We didn't get it, but thank you to everyone who voted for us. So, moving on. Last month, we heard from a flexitarian Green Party activist who appeared as a vegan baby on the BBC in 1976. A woman brought up vegan in an African Hebrew Israelite religious community in Israel.
And if you don't know who they are, hear the episode. It was really an amazing story.
And the son of animal rights activists, who is now raising vegan children of his own.
Listeners called our last episode very interesting and fascinating, but my favorite reaction was from someone who runs an anti-vegan website. He surprised us by writing, "My favorite part of the episode was when the vegan decked the meat eater and challenged him to fight back." So let's refresh our memories about what it's like to grow up vegan by hearing more from Mair, who didn't get much time in our last episode.
In the year 2000, the original soy milk maker Plamil published Vegan Infants Case Histories.
That's the Vegan Infants Case Histories that Ian's waving about.
Now, with an update on Mair.
In our last show, she talked about straying at age 8 and being won back to veganism by Lisa Simpson from The Simpsons.
Puberty has hit Mair, travelling at the speed of light, and my tomboy has disappeared under trendy clothes, makeup, nail varnish, perfume, earrings, brightly coloured hairbands, and regularly sleeps over at friends' houses.
Yeah, my mum showed me them. I was quite embarrassed at the time.
What was it like to be brought up vegan?
I didn't really consider it that much when I was growing up because my mum was vegan and my brother and dad were omnivores. It wasn't until I really got to school that I noticed that my diet was a bit strange. When I used to come in with my packed lunch with tahini and latex sandwiches and sort of at children's parties, I wouldn't be allowed certain foods. So I sort of took it for granted. I didn't really think about the morality of it until I was about 8 years old. And for a while I tried eating an omnivore diet when I was about 8 years old.
Yes.
Just because I wanted to fit in for a bit. But I'm glad that I did, because I think if I was raised vegan, then I feel like I've made my own choice about it now. But if I wasn't raised vegan, I could have just been raised an omnivore, and I think it's a bit better that I chose to do it myself now, and that I did try the other sort of diet.
So how come your brother was raised omnivorous and you were raised vegan?
I'm not entirely sure. I think it's because my mum remarried when I was 1 year old, so he's my half brother, and it was my stepdad, but I think of him as my dad. So yeah, I think my dad just wanted him to eat meat and be normal, but my mum said that she did try raising me vegetarian at first, but then apparently I was lactose intolerant. So I went to a kid's party and I had some cheese and I just come out in eczema. So she thought it would be easier if I was vegan. And then I suppose she didn't have meat in the house, so she wouldn't have been giving me meat. And then I guess it was just something that stuck. But then I think when I got to about 8, I think it's because my dad and brother were eating normally, and my brother got to have all these sweets and different types of food that I thought I'd like to try that. So yeah, I went back to when I was a teenager, when I went to university, I was vegetarian for a bit as well, because it was a bit too expensive trying to be vegan, and I didn't really know how to cook vegan food. When I lived at home with my mum, she mainly fed us Linda McCartney sort of ready meals, like the pies, the sausages, and then sort of chips, and they're pretty much just basic meals like pasta, curry, chips, and some sort of meat-based, fake meat product. But when I went to university, or when I stayed around friends' houses as a teenager, it was a bit too expensive to do that. So I started eating eggs and cheese and drinking normal milk. But when I started learning how to cook more, I went back to being vegan, because I sort of thought that the suffering of the animals outweighed my laziness. I thought basically I was just being vegetarian because I was being lazy and I couldn't be bothered to cook things properly, and it was cheaper. So I made more of an effort to follow a vegan diet again, and I've stuck to it since, and I've been quite happy with it. I knew animals had feelings and a consciousness because we had pets, but it wasn't until I was 8 that I connected that all those animals that you see in the fields, they're just like the pets that we have at home, and I wouldn't want them to be in pain or suffering, and it's just very cruel and unfair. So I've just stuck with those same values since then. And I don't know whether I'd have the same values if my mum wasn't vegan.
You see how important it is to learn how to cook, Ian?
Then it's lucky I'm an expert. You should see me grate carrots.
You need to learn how to do something else. So now we're going to talk a little bit about some things around vegan parenting.
Robin Moore from raisingvegkids.com wrote to say, social situations can be tricky, so I think we need to approach them with comfort, creativity, and be proud of the fact that we are raising compassionate kids with integrity.
It's her. Hello.
This is Lauren, and she's 3, and she's a vegan.
Yeah. And have you raised her from birth as a vegan?
Yes.
So what do you tell Lauren about animals how people who eat animals and things like that?
We haven't gone into anything too graphic yet, because I think children feel a natural affinity anyway, and she understands that other people eat chickens and we don't, and she understands that people eat pigs and that we don't, and I say to her, would you like to? She says no. And we go to animal sanctuaries occasionally, so she's quite happy because she doesn't want to eat an animal.
American writer Ruby Roth has one answer to the question of what we tell our children. She's written the children's books Why We Don't Eat Animals and last month's Vegan is Love. I asked her to sum up the message that she's given to thousands of children.
Well, my books are based on the idea of choices, and I think that the more information we give our kids that allows them to make educated choices themselves, then the more likely they are to make wise choices on their own. So I think every child is capable of much more than most of the world gives them credit for, especially the Western countries. There are no universally accepted ideas of what children can and cannot handle. The concept of childhood differs throughout time and throughout history and throughout the world. So I think every child is different, but the discussion can begin as early as they begin to speak.
You just tell the children the way it is.
I think the easiest way out of any predicament is to tell the truth, and whatever wording that works for people, I think will work for their children.
So there'll be lots of parents in the audience for this show, I hope. And they might wonder what you know about children, why you were particularly inspired to write these books.
Well, I was teaching art at an elementary school, and the children were all really curious about why I wasn't eating the cheese and the milk that was being served to them at recess.
Sorry, elementary school is how old?
It's 1st to 5th grade here, so they're anywhere from like 6 and 7 through 10 and 11.
So what did you tell them in the classroom when they were asking?
I just started to share my views about animals, that I choose not to eat animals because there's no way to eat animals without hurting them. And the more I shared, the more interested they were about this lifestyle that makes an instant and positive impact on the world that we live in. Any kid is especially interested when it comes to animals and protecting animals. This book and Vegan Choices really make sense to kids.
Vegan is Love has had quite an immediate impact. You've been interviewed on CNN, NBC and Fox. The Amazon reviews are either 5 stars out of 5 or the absolute minimum, nothing ever in between. How would you describe the ranges of reaction you've had to the book?
The response has been tremendous, from support that's coming in from all around the world, all the way to hate mail that comes in from around the world. And
hate mail?
Yeah, people actually writing letters about just how absurd they think the book is and how children cannot make these decisions on their own, and how dare I come on to TV and talk about these issues. The hate mail is actually the most absurd, because you can tell when someone is informed and has an educated argument and when somebody is uninformed and has an uneducated argument, which is usually the case. But I've heard from everybody from military men to militant vegans and moms and even meat eaters who are just interested in the discussion.
If you have one suggestion for parents raising vegan children, what would it be?
I think the journey is really about adding new foods in to the repertoire than taking them away. I think the more we include kids in our discussions and our choices, whether we're shopping at the grocery store or at the farmer's market, explaining why we spend our dollars the way we do, then the more they understand and the more this kind of education lasts a lifetime for a child.
Ruby Roth, thank you very much.
Lauren, what are you?
A vegan.
How long have you been vegan, Lauren?
You always have been, haven't you?
And your daddy is really?
A vegan.
Yeah. He's a vegan dad. So, tell me your name.
Dominic.
And tell us a little bit about yourself, in terms of you being a vegan dad.
In terms of being a vegan dad, well, it's really important to me to bring up my child as a vegan, because I think when you bring a child into the world, every human being has an impact on the world, on the environment, on the other animals that we share the earth with. And so I think the best way to minimise that impact is to bring your child up as a vegan.
And what do you tell Lauren about animals and things?
Pretty much tell her the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Probably leaving out some of the more graphic detail, but I don't.
We haven't needed to. She gets it.
I think this is my interview, not yours. You've had yours. What I really hate is these books that go, the pig gives us bacon, the cow gives us milk. I mean, what an absolute load of rubbish, for want of a stronger word. It's lies. What if you're going to have children, why lie to them about the world? You bring them into the world and then lie to them. What's the point? Why even have a child in the first place? Tell them the truth. otherwise how's the world ever going to change?
So in our last podcast, we had talked to people who were vegan from birth, and some people rebelled and they wanted to try a thing that other children had tried. Have you all thought much about what to do if Lauren rebels, or if your other children end up rebelling?
Well, so far she came home from nursery and her little friend decided she wanted to be a vegan. So so far it's kind of gone the other way, rather than. But yes, you just manage things, provide options. Make sure there's always an alternative available, and explain really thoroughly why we are vegan and why it's important. But if she says one day I want to eat bacon, well, we'll just make sure there's some vegan bacon in the fridge or something. Just try and make sure there's always an alternative, and it's always a good alternative. And you've got to understand the situation.
She amazes me because she's almost more vegan than I am. She's absolutely committed to it. At the age of 3, well, even probably at 2, she won't touch anything that isn't vegan at the moment, so I can't really see her rebelling.
Straight away she'll say, no, I don't want it, and if the parent says, oh, I don't know if it's vegan, because they don't know what it means, she'll say, I don't want it then.
Yeah, she's really good at that. Yeah, I think she's just, I'm hoping, at the moment it just looks like she's just going to be a vegan because she wants to be, because she knows the truth.
What if she grows up and she changes her mind and she decides to eat meat? How would you handle that, do you think?
I haven't thought about it because I absolutely can't see it happening. It's a bridge that I will cross when it comes to me.
It's just not going to happen. La 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 la.
That is, unfortunately, all we have time for.
This is a podcast. You can go on as long as you like.
Well, this is all of our listeners' time that we're taking up. Our thanks to Mair Perkins and Ruby Roth, to Rob Masters for the music, to Tim and JP at VegfestUK for hosting us, for Kevin and Patrina Butler for assisting us so ably with the studio setup, and our first ever outside recording.
Find more, including pictures of the event, at theveganoption.org. Please follow Vegan Option on Twitter, like Vegan Option on Facebook, give us good reviews on iTunes, Stitcher, and now YouTube.
The show is copyright us. Ian MacDonald reporting and producing.
And Diana Fleischman chatting away. Goodbye until next month.
Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.